Whoa, what is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Football is in the air for the New York Giants as training camp got underway. I'm going to try to do these training camp recap videos probably daily as much as I can early on, talking about things, but I'm never going to read too much into this. It's practice at the end of the day. We all remember last year when the report came out that Wink Martindale was being told the plays to put Daniel Jones through adversity. You found that out after the fact. So you can't read too much into these practices. I plan on going to training camp on the weekend this week. That's at least the plan right now. So hopefully I get out there. I was kind of jealous seeing all the clips today, seeing all the Giants content creators, all the beat reporters that were there reporting at camp. Wishing I was there because it's an exciting time to be a New York Giants fan as they got underway today. But we're going to start with the big story of the day, which, unless you're living under a rock, you've heard about it. The New York Giants, as we all knew, we just didn't know what was going to happen yet, extended Andrew Thomas. And I'm going to talk about how good of a deal this is. And I am shocked that the Giants were able to extend him for the price that they did. A lot of people are going to see the money. They're going to be like, what are you talking about? Well, we're going to put it in the context. And this is a steal by Joe Shane. And this is what good general managers do. They think long term, and that's exactly what this is. When you have a left tackle, that is a long term position. That is a position that you say to yourself, yeah, Andrew Thomas is going to be here for at least another 5 to 7 years. And that's at a bare minimum. Obviously, you're hoping much longer than that. You're hoping this guy plays into his mid to late 30s as a New York Giant, but he's clearly a guy that you're willing to say, yeah, I'm willing to invest now after 3 years. I'm willing to give him that extension. I will take that risk that he may potentially regress or get hurt or whatever it may be, because that's the only risk you're taking here with the contract that the New York Giants signed Andrew Thomas to today. Before we get into the specifics, usually when a young player signs a contract, you expect especially when they're at the top 5 at their position. Andrew Thomas may even be higher than that. Coming off an All-Pro last year, he's still only like 25 years old. You expect them to reset the market. So we all knew when Andrew Thomas signed his deal, it was going to be in the mid-20s. Like, that's just what the market is. Right now, Laramie Tunsil is the highest paid left tackle in the National Football League. 3 years, $75 million, I think 50 of which was guaranteed. Andrew Thomas didn't quite get that in terms of per year average, which shocked me. I thought he would get at least 25. He ended up getting, I think, 23 and a half, and we're going to go over the specifics now. But that's not the best part of this deal for me. We'll get into all of it. This is the contract details. Got this from Giants Wire. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Giants are signing Thomas to a 5-year contract extension worth $117.5 million. And when you do the math, that is, I think it's just under $24 million a year, with $67 million guaranteed, which is a record. That is the most guaranteed money ever given to a left tackle. And next year, there'll be another left tackle that breaks it. That's just the way that it works. The team has since confirmed the move. Thomas, who was entering the 4th year of his rookie deal and wasn't set to hit free agency until 2025, is now secured through the 2029 campaign. We're going to get into that in a minute. The annual average of the deal is $23.5 million, making Thomas the second highest paid left tackle in the NFL, trailing only Laramie Tunsil, according to Over the Cap. However, the fully guaranteed amount in the contract is a new NFL record for an offensive lineman. And before I give my full opinion on the contract, well-deserved. Andrew Thomas is arguably our most important player. I mean, he's that important to this football team. I still side with the quarterback, but he's Daniel Jones' best friend. Daniel Jones came out today and said he was not only happy for Andrew Thomas, but he was happy for himself. He understands how much he means to him, him and the rest of this offense, being that he's one of the best blindside protectors in the National Football League. In terms of why this deal is such a good deal, that deal does not kick in until 2025. To put this in context, right now, Laramie Tunsil is the highest paid tackle in the National Football League in terms of AAV, average per year salary, right? $25 million a year. That is based off a salary cap that is about roughly $225 million a year. That makes up roughly 11, I think slightly above 11% of the salary cap, right? In terms of his average per year salary pertaining to the cap. The cap right now is projected to be roughly $275 million in 2025, which is when this deal starts at $23.5 million a year on average, because he's going to have the 5th-year option and he's going to have the remainder of this year. $23.5 million a year on average on a $275 million salary cap is under 9%. That is a huge difference when you're talking these types of millions of dollars. So to be able to get Andrew Thomas for this deal, for a deal that does not kick into 2025, is a steal. And it's Joe Schoen thinking like it's chess, not checkers. If you look at it side by side, slightly over 11% off a $275 million salary cap, roughly would have been $30 million a year. So that's the way that Andrew Thomas could have looked at this. Instead, he says, I'm going to take my guaranteed money now while I could get it. I'm not going to risk it, and I'll take my $23.5 million. But that's going to be a slam dunk for the New York Giants, because let's hypothetically say that Andrew Thomas played out this year without an extension. He played out next year on the fifth-year option. If he hit the open market then, he's looking for at least $30 million a year. Joe Schoen saw that. He said, well, I know I'm going to need to extend this guy anyway. Let's do it now. Let's get him for $23.5 million a year, and I'll save my money that way, and that will allow me maybe to retain a player like Xavier McKinney long-term, right? So this is big boy thinking, right? I've talked about this several times. I hate to give the Dallas Cowboys credit, but when they were in the beginning, the infancy of the building of their roster, they did things similar to this. Tyron Smith, they signed him like a 7-year extension. It was something ridiculous, but it worked out to be such a bargain throughout the rest of his career. By the time this kicks in, when it first starts, like I said, his average per year salary is going to be under 9% of the cap. Year two, you're probably talking 7.5%, because that's probably going to balloon up over $300 million a year. So this is a great deal for the New York Giants. And now you're starting to see Joe Schoen build his core, to build his foundation, right? Most important pieces on a football team: quarterback, tackle, edge, corner. Look at the roster. Look at what he's done this offseason. 4-year contract, Daniel Jones. 5-year contract, Andrew Thomas. There's your tackle. 4-year contract, Dexter Lawrence. There's your pass rusher. Drafted Kayvon Thibodeau last year, 2nd year of his rookie deal. Drafted Evan Neal last year, another tackle, 2nd year of his rookie deal. And, of course, drafted Deonte Banks in the first round of this year's draft. So suddenly you have arguably the 4 most important positions wrapped up on this team pretty much for the next 4 or 5 years. Pretty much. And you could see that he's building his foundation. He has a clear plan in place, and he's going to continue to build this team through the draft. But he's also not going to ignore guys that he knows will be core pieces for this team going forward. So they reward Dexter Lawrence, they reward Daniel Jones, and they reward Andrew Thomas. Arguably 3 of the most important positions if you consider Dexter Lawrence a pass rusher. Regardless, he's the most important player right now on this defense for this New York Giants football team. And like I said, you still have Kayvon, Neal, Banks. I didn't even mention John Michael Smith, which is going to be imperative for the long-term future of this team as well. So there was a clear long-term core being built for this team, and we'll see how it all pans out throughout the rest of their careers. But how can you not be thrilled if you're a New York Giants fan with this offseason, with the way that Joe Schoen handled it? He, like I said, he just wrapped up all those guys to long-term contracts. The Dexter Lawrence, same thing, doesn't kick in for another year or two. That'll be below market rate by the time it kicks in. Same thing with Andrew Thomas. This is big boy thinking. This is long-term thinking. This is what the best general managers in the NFL do. So I think it's a great job by Joe Schoen, and I am excited to see Andrew Thomas in a New York Giants uniform for at least the next 7 years if he sees the conclusion of that contract, and there's no reason to think he won't. So the biggest winner today, Daniel Jones and Giants fans, because we know that we need him. Andrew Thomas, a big get there for the Giants to lock him up long-term, something that we knew that was going to happen. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be for that much per year and that the contract would kick in 2 years, though. So I think that was a big win for the New York Giants. Now we're going to go over some of the things that came out today at training camp. I figured I'd touch on some of the quotes. Darren Waller was the standout, and we'll talk about that, but everybody was raving about Darren Waller. And again, I don't read too much into training camp, but before I start reading these quotes, I will say I'll take it with a grain of salt. I remember 2 years ago, and by no means did I think that this meant that Kenny Golladay was going to flop, but I remember his first training camp, everybody said he looked underwhelming. He didn't look near what, beat reporters were expecting. And of course, we all poo-pooed that. That turned out to be accurate and relevant. Today, Darren Waller was getting rave reviews. But first, we're going to start with Saquon Barkley. Of course, that's a major storyline. Him showing up at camp after signing the contract yesterday. Great to see that. I know, obviously, Saquon, this is Joe Schoen, by the way. I know, obviously, Saquon, we engaged in negotiations over a 9.5-month period, Shane told the media. At the end of the day, we couldn't come to an agreement on a longer-term deal. But we circled back on Monday, and fortunately, we're able to get an agreement with altering the franchise tag a little bit to get him to camp. We're ecstatic, fired up that Saquon's going to be here for the start of the camp. So excited about that. Saquon and I have a really good relationship, Dable added. We have communicated a lot, and he's here, ready to go and excited to be here. And I'm excited that he's here. And it's a win-win. I mean, for the Giants, it is not necessarily for Barkley, who's obviously hoping for more money. But for the Giants, you keep the locker room intact. Everybody's thrilled. They got their leader back. They got their captain. Everybody rallies around him. And Joe Schoen did not have to sign him to what is a risky contract at a risky position. So, in terms of injury history. So, that's a win for Joe Schoen. I mean, another feather in his cap this offseason, the way that he handled it. Next up, I know obviously I already read that actually. I just wanted to read the end part of this. We're obviously thrilled to have him back, Jones said about the running back. It was a tough situation for him, and I'm glad that we got it worked out. He's an incredible leader on this team. He's an incredible player and means so much to this group. So, yeah, it's huge to get him back. And what do you expect Jones to say? Of course, he's always going to stick up for his guy, and sorry about that. Now, this coming out from Jordan Renan in terms of practice notes, said some Giants observations. Darren Waller is a matchup nightmare. Giants linebackers couldn't handle him during the first practice. He's the number one receiver. And before I get into the rest, I never know how to read these. I mean, of course, we're all excited to hear that, but you don't like hearing that he's tearing apart Bobby Okereke or whoever was guarding him. But we know he's going to be a matchup nightmare for pretty much every linebacker in the NFL. Arguably one of the 2 or 3 best pass catching tight ends in the league when he's on the field. And you got to think about all the different things that you could do with a player like this in a Mike Kafka, Brian Dable-led offense. How are you not excited hearing these practice reports, seeing how he looked, in the first day of camp? So really excited. Just need him to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, we know he's going to have a great year. Pinnock, interestingly enough, gets the first crack at winning the safety job next to Xavier McKinney. Saquon Barkley, of course, still good. And that's an interesting side note, but it's early. Obviously, that's kind of an open competition. You got Belton. You got Bobby McCain, who we picked up from Washington, and some of the other youngsters. So it'll be an interesting battle, but at least Pinnock got the first crack at the starting safety spot opposite Xavier McKinney. Further going into some of the, I guess, guys that were getting first-team reps, Ben Bredesen took first-team snaps at center ahead of John Michael Smith. That put Josh Azudu at first-team left guard. Darian Beavers was first up at inside linebacker. Micah McFadden also received first-team reps. Wide receiver Cole Beasley thrown right into the mix, a Brian Dable fave. So, yeah, I also read that from Bobby today, that Beasley was getting a lot of first-team reps. Of course, we have a lot of injuries at the slot, but maybe Beasley does, in fact, have a really good chance to make this team. As far as the John Michael Smith thing, I'm not reading too much into that. I still think John Michael Smith is going to be the opening day center to start the season, being that we took him in the second round. He's a natural center. Bredesen, of course, a natural guard who does have some center reps. But this is not uncommon in the NFL, particularly at the very beginning of camp. You don't expect, your rookies necessarily to go out there and start day one. So I fully expect John Michael Smith to be the starter opening week against the Dallas Cowboys, but they give Bredesen a look at the center, who will probably project to be the backup if something were to happen to John Michael Smith. And it was nice to see Josh Azudu got some first-team reps at the guard spot. I still think that spot will be Bredesen's, and, of course, Gowinski on the other side at the guard spot at the beginning of the season, but I could definitely see Azudu morphing into the starter as the season wears along. More talk about Darren Waller. This coming out from Giants Videos, SNY. We saw Darren Waller get to work in the red zone, and this guy is basically uncoverable. That was from Connor Hughes in a video that he had for Giants Video on SNY. So, again, rave reviews, and then he went a little bit more in depth on Darren Waller and some of the other things that he saw at training camp. This also from Connor Hughes. Darren Waller is going to be a problem for defenses, Andrew Thomas said. He's right. This guy is nearly unguardable in the red zone and put on a show in his first practice. Xavier McKinney pointed out how his size, speed, and athleticism make him such a challenge. Basically, humans shouldn't be that large and that fast. Special, he called him. He has to stay healthy, major X factor. But if he does, this offense should have a go-to guy. Love hearing that. We all know that we need that number one threat. Paris Campbell, who you all know I'm a fan of, I've been talking him up for the last couple months. I was very excited about that signing, is another one to watch. He might be a sneaky good signing for Joe Schoen. He's fitting in well in the slot role, but has outside versatility too. Again, like Waller, He just has to stay healthy. And I think they're going to be there. I personally, in terms of pass catchers, I think those are going to be our two best weapons this year if they could stay on the field. The scary thing is both of them have an extensive injury history. But if they could stay on the field, much like he just said there, I think Paris Campbell is a tremendous fit in this offensive scheme, and a guy that's a chess piece like Darren Waller with the offensive minds that we have calling the plays. I mean, they're going to find something. They obviously had a clear plan when they traded for him. It was a sharp day for Daniel Jones. The Giants stay in the red zone the first couple of days in practice. No need to have a player pop a hammy on day one. So some of these numbers are skewed, but I had him accounting for 3 touchdowns in the 2 periods. He saw Isaiah Hodgins and Daniel Bellinger. He also ran one in himself. He looks very comfortable in year 2 in Brian Daboll's offense. And his training camp. I'm not going to get too high. I'm not going to get too low. We know we're going to have reports where Daniel Jones throws 4 picks and people are jumping off of bridges. And we're going to have reports like today where Daniel Jones throws 3 or 4 touchdowns and people say he's the next Dan Marino. Keep it even keel. There's going to be a lot of overreactions in training camp. But regardless, I'm really excited to see that the Giants are back. And yeah, that you love hearing that about Darren Waller. He, of course, is probably the biggest key in terms of the pass catcher, the weaponry, rather, in this year's offense for the New York Giants if we're really going to start to open it up. And rave reviews for him day 1 at New York Giants training camp. Also saw some bromance there between Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. They got several videos all over Twitter. I hope that works out, man. I don't think it will. I think Leo will probably gone after this year just based on the market, but I would love to see him and Dex stay together for a few more years. Andrew Thomas, how are you not smiling ear to ear today if you're a New York Giant fan? It's a great deal, and a steal of a deal as far as I'm concerned. Love to see big number 78 lining up there on the left side, hopefully for the next 7 years for the New York Giants. As always, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.